All right, guys, what's going on? Professing Preterist back at it again. A little bit of a different stream today. We're actually going to be looking at this YouTube channel here. It's called God a Minute. Fairly big YouTube channel, actually. 54, almost 55,000 subscribers. And it's a Rapture channel. Okay. Basically, this whole thing comes from a video that he did
It's the end
on Ezekiel, Rapture stuff. Essentially, it's sad. Okay. And what I mean by that is these people are the same. Every year they say the rapture is, going to be in January, then it's going to be in February, then it's going to be in March, then it's going to be in April, then it's going to be in May, then it's going to be in June, then July, then August, then September, then October, then November. Come around December time, they're like, we guarantee it's before the end of this year. Or if they don't want to say guarantee, because they know that would, indicate that they are a quote unquote false prophet or whatever, their date setting, as these rapture people call it. Then they say, well, I feel very strongly that we're going to see the rapture before the end of the year. And it's just not biblical, first of all. Second of all, this is a fairly large following. To have 55,000 people watching your content, I believe that we have a little bit of an onus on us as professing Christians to give the truth to that big of an audience. So I called this guy out. I said there's no rapture scenario in the Bible, and I've offered to debate you plenty of times on this, which is true. Since you have a large following and are teaching a false doctrine, I believe you need to be stopped. So he actually responded. He said, sure, let's debate it. Are you willing to change your mind on the subject? Please contact me if you're willing to change your mind. I said, of course, I'm always open to and seeking the truth. What is the best email for you? As of this moment, don't have a response to this comment. Don't know how to get a hold of this guy if there is an email for him, but I'm going to debate him. I need to. I feel very strongly that I just need to do that. And with that being said, I want to take a little bit of time to prep for the debate, because this is a somewhat larger following. It's very easy to debunk rapture anyway. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, if you're of that camp, don't know what to tell you. Okay, John 17 destroys the rapture 100%. But when obviously these people have, it's unfortunate because they have a very good understanding of the themes of the Bible. I've watched this guy's content before, and he understands the feast days. He understands how they tie in to the eschatology and the return of Christ. But the problem is they're just misapplied and elongated, right? There is no rapture in the Bible. And the more that people sit here waiting for it, quote unquote, the worse it just looks for Christians. Many people make fun of Christians for their rapture belief, which, I'm not going to say it's okay to make fun of anybody, but if you know the truth and you know how to defend covenantal eschatology, then it's a much different conversation that you can have with these people that are trying to make fun of us, right? So what I want to do is I want to kind of go over, we'll just go over this video actually that he did, and we can just take it point by point. It's all very standard rapture talking points. These people aren't truly like reinventing the wheel or anything. Okay, rapture has always been a doctrine that they have their set of verses they go to, and they try to concile what they mean in a return of Jesus physically coming type event. But you still have people that are divided within the rapture camp. You have people that are believing in what is that called? Premillennial and post-millennial, and
It's the end of the world.
And they're, you know, believing in like pre-trib and mid-trib and, you know, whatever. It's because people don't understand how to rightly divide the word. Cut the word, as Paul says. So let's go ahead and we will get into listening to this video as a proof text, and I'll stop it as we go along. When I debate this guy, I am going to actually have a presentation because it's just much easier. It's like the best way to debunk rapture people is to just use the Bible itself and just use verses that are cohesive. So that's what I'll do. I'll share my screen as I kind of go through and, you know, build my argument, build my case. But let's listen to what this guy has to say real quick.
World as we know it, and I feel fine. Let's get out of here. Aye. Looking to support this ministry? Donation links are always in the description box below. Hey everybody, it's Aaron from Got a Minute, and this is going to be a prophecy in Ezekiel, just a quick overview of this cool thought, and I've got 7 charts in general to show you. So we're going to make this simple right here. Be on the lookout for a live stream. I think we're going to live stream either Tuesday night or Wednesday night EST time, likely Tuesday night. We'll see what happens. This is just a little taste, a little appetizer. Okay, so I'm going to flip this around and show you what I've got here. We're not going to really read the Bible too much, but I think we'll do a live stream and we'll read through a lot of biblical scriptures. Okay, let's pause and turn around. Okay,
so here's the proof text, right, for essentially theorizing. That's what this guy's doing. He's theorizing prophecy in Ezekiel. And it's interesting because he understands the first half of the book of Ezekiel is judgment in a temporal sense. The latter half of Ezekiel is talking about the messianic temple. Okay. So he understands, he gets it. He's saying, hey, Ezekiel 1 through 24 is, you know, judgment on Israel. And then 25 through 32 is judgment for the foreign nations. And then 33 through 48 is for this, you know, whatever, new life for Israel, I guess he quotes it as. It's not really how Ezekiel is broken up. The book of Ezekiel is essentially broken up chiastically, and it's talking about the first half is temporal judgment on the nations. The last half, the latter half, is about the Messianic temple. And I mean, I guess we could say you could go up to like probably Ezekiel 33 to really say that, okay, this is where we start talking about the future. But let's see where he goes with this. Let's see how he cooks, and we'll go from there.
So what we have here is prophecy in Ezekiel with potentially the chapter numbers. So in Ezekiel 1 through 24, the general theme is judgment on Israel. Then from chapter 25 through 32, it's the theme of judgment on foreign nations. Then Ezekiel 33 through 48, it's generally the comfort and new life for Israel. So Ezekiel 25 through 32 stands out as a very different aspect in the chiastic structure of Ezekiel. It's the judgment on foreign nations. I think it's so cool. This is actually this is my radio, and I take this off a radio, and I like the point. So we can read some verses, but if you read chapter 28 and 29, it's like so Antichrist themed in that those.
So this is a very common argument as well, because because of the language that's used in Ezekiel 28 and 29. So let's take a look here. I'll make this bigger so we can all see this. Hopefully this is pretty legible. So The problem that people have with Ezekiel 28 and 29 is they think that this is some kind of future event, and they think that it's talking about um, the Antichrist, like this guy just said. And the reason why is because they believe that the king of Tyre, for whatever reason, okay, this is kind of crazy that people think this, but they think that for whatever reason, the king of Tyre is Satan. Now, the reason why is because the language used here in verse like 13 through 17, or maybe even like honestly 13 through 19, they cannot people cannot understand what covenantal language is. So people get very confused and they think that this is talking about Satan. I don't know why, but let's look at what it says. So it says, "And there is a word of Jehovah unto me, saying, Son of man, lift up a lamentation for the king of Tyre. And thou hast said to him, Thus said the Lord Jehovah, Thou art sealing up a measurement full of wisdom and perfect in beauty." So if we stop right there, this is literally Ezekiel prophesying in a timeline that is real. Okay, this is like real life. There was a king of Tyre when Ezekiel was prophesying. Okay, and this king of Tyre was being told that he was about to be brought to destruction. And I hate to break it to you guys, but that actually happened. Tyre got invaded and they lost, right? Where we're to go now, where Tyre is, it is a small fishing port. It's a little island off the coast of wherever, Lebanon or wherever it is, and it's a small fishing town. It used to be a big, giant, strong kingdom. So I don't know what people are expecting. Are they thinking that overnight there's going to be some great giant castle that pops up out of the ground in Tyre? No, that makes no sense, right? But this is God saying that he's sealing up, well, the king of Tyre, because of his actions, was sealing up his own measurement because he was full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. He's like, yeah, like you think you're the best, but you're filling up your measure. Just like God warned that Israel was going to fill up the measure of their sin and pour it back into their lap. This is language talking about empires being brought down. The difference is that Israel's empire was always a more spiritual one because they were the ones who God had revealed himself to. That revelation of God to them was about to end in the first century, and God was going to be made known to all mankind. So anyway, verse 13 says, "In Eden, the garden of God, thou hast been, every precious stone thy covering." So let's stop right here. People they're like, wait a second, the king of Tyre was in the Garden of Eden? Oh, that's got to be Satan. That's got, because the serpent was there. And then like somehow people have got this like, old wives' tale that Satan was the most beautiful of all angels, right? Because it's saying, oh yeah, he was perfect in beauty, and he's got precious stones as his covering. And no, ladies and gentlemen, this is metaphorical language. Because when he's talking about precious stones being ruby, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald, carbuncle, gold, let me show you what it is. Why can I not find Isaiah? There it is. So Isaiah 54, same thing. Right? O afflicted, storm tossed, not comforted, lo, I am laying with cement thy stones, and have founded thee with sapphires, made of agate thy pinnacles, thy gates of carbuncle stones, all thy border of stones of delight. And this is the new Jerusalem. And this is covenantal language. God says it's the covenant of my peace. So when we go to Revelation and we see that this heavenly Jerusalem comes down, it's got the I want to go specifically to where, look at this. And the 12 gates are 12 pearls, each several one of the gates was of one pearl, and the broad place of the city is pure gold as transparent glass. This is this It's literally the same language as Isaiah and the same language as Ezekiel 24 or 28, sorry. Where this is him just saying, like, yeah, there's gold and carbuncle and there's all these beautiful stones that are covenantal language. What God is saying is that for all intents and purposes, the king of Tyre was in covenant with God. God had like brought him into this covenant. That's why he was in Eden. And the workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes in the day of thy being produced have been prepared. Thou art an anointed cherub who is covering, and I have set thee in the holy mount. God, thou hast been. Okay, so again, this is a position. Okay, when we see the word God, we have to understand that it's talking about being it's kind of like you call President Trump President Trump. His name isn't President Trump. It's the title of his office. Okay, so he's saying that the king of Tyre has been as like a god. That's his office because he was subjecting people. This was a strong nation, right? An army, a force that was going through the Middle East, the ancient Near East, in the time of Ezekiel prophesying. And in the midst of stones of fire thou hast walked up and down. Perfect art thou in thy ways from the day of thy being produced till perversity hath been found in thee. So this is again covenantal language. God is saying that he was produced, meaning he was brought forth into the Garden of Eden. This is exactly what happened with Adam, right? Adam was brought forth into the Garden of Eden. He was covenantally made outside the garden, and he was placed in the garden. But then perversity was found in him. And what happened? Well, let's see what God has to say. By the abundance of thy merchandise, they have filled thy midst with violence, and thou dost sin, and I thrust thee from the mount of God, and I destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. So if he was thrust out from the mountain of God, or from the mount of God, that means he was booted out of covenant. That's what this means. Okay? High hath been thy heart because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom because of thy brightness. On the land I have cast thee before kings. I have set thee to look on thee. Literally, God is saying that there was judgment coming via pagan armies. That's how God does judgment. Pagan armies come and destroy other kingdoms. Same thing he did to Assyria and Judah, right? He brought Assyria. Same thing he did to Israel and Judah, the two kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. He brought Assyria, who was a pagan nation, against the northern kingdom. And then he brought Babylon, who was a pagan nation, to the southern kingdom. So this is very consistent language. And essentially, the other nations would come against these other nations as well. Assyria fell to the Babylonian Empire. That was one pagan nation falling to another pagan nation. So it says, from the abundance of thy iniquity, by the perversity of thy traffic, thou hast polluted thy sanctuaries, and I bring forth fire from thy midst. It hath devoured thee, and I make thee become ashes on the land before the eyes of all beholding thee. So again, this is judgment language. And I mean, apparently these people had sanctuaries and they were worshiping the one true God. Again, there's a lot of type and anti-type uh, language in the Old Testament, right? So this type here is that yeah, there may have been a remnant of these people in Tyre that had learned who God was, and because of this, they perverted or polluted the sanctuaries. Or it could just be that these sanctuaries in general were not to the one true God, so that's what made them polluted. Either way, they were going to become ashes on the land. It's not literal, right? And knowing thee among the peoples has been astonished at thee. Waste thou hast been, and thou art not to the age. So thou art not. He's saying, I'm undoing your kingdom, King of Tyre. And then he says Ezekiel 29 as well, but this is, I know why he says it as well, because same thing. Okay, look at here. We'll just start from the top. In the 10th year, in the 10th month, in the 12th of the month, hath a word of Jehovah been unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt. I don't know why. I really don't understand why on God's green earth anybody would look at this and say, this must be about the Antichrist. Like, what are you talking about? This is Ezekiel prophesying against the king of Egypt in, I don't know, let's see. Can we get a timeline? Let's see if there's a timeline here. Let's see. Let's go to the main page real quick. So according to what most scholars would probably believe, Ezekiel was prophesying in about 590 BC, roughly. 580 BC. Right? We could roughly say in the mid 580s. Sure, I'm okay with that. So this is 586 years before Christ ever is even on the scene, as they say. So this is the king of Egypt 580 some odd years before Jesus. That's who is being prophesied to, folks. This is not hard. And it says, and prophesy concerning him and concerning Egypt, all of it. So all of Egypt was in this prophecy. Speak, and thou hast said, thus said the Lord Jehovah, lo, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that is crouching in the midst of his floods, who hath said, my flood is my own, and I have made it for myself. This is why people believe that is talking about the Antichrist, because he calls him the great serpent or the great dragon or whatever. Okay. This again is typology by God calling the Pharaoh of Egypt the great dragon or the serpent is akin to the actual serpent, who is the devil, who is the adversary, who is Mosaic covenant Israel. But the Pharaoh of Egypt is associated with that because he represents one, Egypt, which was the bondage that Israel was in. So he was their adversary. Egypt themselves as a nation, corporately. And also because of probably how he was ruling and reigning in 580 some odd BC. See what he says, who had said, my flood is my own and I have made it for myself. Well, he's trying to put himself above God. And I have put hooks in thy jaws, and I have caused the fish of thy floods to cleave to thy scales, and I have caused thee to come up from the midst of thy floods, and every fish of thy floods to thy scales doth cleave. And I have left thee in the wilderness. Saying, yeah, you're not in covenant, you're in the wilderness, right? In this time frame, 580 some odd BC. Do you think being in the wilderness is where you want it to be, ladies and gentlemen? I've said this before. Wilderness is like bad. It's like not good. There's no water. There's no food. There's no security, right? A wilderness back then was dangerous as hell. Okay. It's not like they could hop in their car and go drive to the nearest Circle K if things got a little hairy. So this is strong language. If you're left in the wilderness, he's like, yeah, you're in a bad place. Thou and every fish of thy floods on the face of the field thou dost fall. Thou art not gathered nor assembled. To the beast of the earth and to the fowl of the heavens I have given thee for food. This is literally, well, yeah, it's very similar language to what we see later on in Ezekiel with Gog and Magog and in Revelation. So let's talk about this though. The beast of the earth and the fowl of the heavens to be given for food is again super judgmental language, because if you remember back when I did my last live stream, I don't know, a while ago, when we go to Genesis 1 and we see that there's the creation of man, look at what happens here. And God saith, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them rule over fish of the sea and over fowl of the heavens and over cattle, over all the earth, over every creeping thing that is creeping on the earth. Okay, so this is talking about power, sovereignty, rulership. When God made Adam, he was making him in covenant, right? Because he made him outside of Eden, but he made him in his image, so he was able to place him in the garden. This is covenantal language. But what happens in Genesis 3 is that the serpent is cursed above every beast of the field and the cattle and everything, right? And it would eat dust. Dust thou dost eat. Well, Adam gets turned back into the dust. For dust thou art, and unto dust thou turnest back. So the dust that Adam was turned back into, that he was, okay, that consisted of him, comprised of him, is spiritually. So he was below even the serpent, who was below all the other beasts. So that's what's important to understand what's being said here in Ezekiel 29. When it's talking about Pharaoh, he's saying that you're below the beasts of the earth and the fowl of the heavens. You're kicked out of covenant, or you're not in covenant. And known have all inhabitants of Egypt that I am Jehovah, because of their being a staff of reed to the house of Israel. So again, God saying, like, they know who I am because they know who, like, what happened with Moses, right, over there in Egypt. Jill says Ace can't stand the Bible. Well, I just got back on his channel after being out of covenant with Ace. Hey, he left me in the wilderness. So I mean, there's a whole discussion to be had there, but I don't know, man. Maybe one day he will. Maybe one day he'll agree with me on something. Let's put it that way. Because I've agreed with him on things before, but he's never agreed with me on a single thing. So it says, in there taking hold of thee by thy hand, thou art crushed, and hast rent to them all the shoulder, and in their leaning on thee, thou art broken, and hast caused all their thighs to stand. So it's saying, like, you're not going to be able to support them, I guess, is kind of this language I'm getting. Therefore, thus says the Lord Jehovah, lo, I am bringing in against thee a sword, and have cut off from thee man and beast. And the land of Egypt hath been for a desolation and a waste, and they have known that I am Jehovah, because he said, the flood is mine and I made it. So that's what pissed God off. He's like, you think that you did all this? Really, it's God doing all of it. Therefore, lo, I'm against thee and against thy floods, and have given the land of Egypt for wastes, a waste of desolation, from Migdol to Sean, and unto the border of Cush. Not pass over into it doth a foot of man, yea, the foot of beast doth not pass into it, nor is it inhabited 40 years. Again, I'm getting type and anti-type vibes here. Israel went into their exodus for 40 years. God saying that Egypt would be in exile for 40 years. And Israel went into their final exile for 40 years in 30 AD when Christ was offered up at that cross. And I have made the land of Egypt a desolation in the midst of desolate lands, and its cities in the midst of waste cities are desolation 40 years. So we got a 40-year timeline. And I have scattered the Egyptians among nations, and I have dispersed them through lands. This happened. It really did. You can read about it. It is the Babylonian siege on Egypt. Let me go ahead and see here. Or was it Assyria? Yeah. Okay. Apologies. So when we look at what God is talking about, there is a period of time when well, first and foremost, you had contemporary Battle of Megiddo. Okay. He was teamed up with the fading Neo-Assyrian Empire, and they went against the Babylonian Empire. They went through the place controlled by the kingdom of Judah. They didn't let them pass. The Judean forces battled the Egyptians at Megiddo, resulting in Josiah's death and his kingdom becoming a vassal state of Egypt. So there's a whole thing going on here. Second Kings talks about it as well. And yeah, I mean, essentially, what's being talked about here is Egypt was going to have judgment brought upon it through a foreign army. So it says, but thus said the Lord Jehovah, at the end of 40 years, I gathered the Egyptians out of the peoples whither they have been scattered, and I have turned back to the captivity of Egypt. And I brought them back to the land of Pathros in the land of their birth, and they have been there a low kingdom. Of the kingdoms, it is lowest, and it lifteth not up itself any more above the nations. And I have made them few, so as not to rule among nations. And it is no more to the house of Israel for a confidence, bring iniquity to remembrance by their turning after them, and they have known that I am the Lord Jehovah. So again, this is, I believe, talking about when they came and turned the kingdom of Judah into a vassal state. Because look what it says here. And it cometh to pass in the 27th year, in the first month, in the first of the month, hath a word of Jehovah been unto me, saying, Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, or Canarezar, king of Babylon, hath caused his force to serve a great service against Tyre. Every head is bald, every shoulder peeled, and reward he had none, nor his force out of Tyre, for the service that he served against it. Therefore, thus said the Lord Jehovah, Lo, I am giving to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the land of Egypt. And he hath taken away its store, and hath taken its spoil, and taken its prey, and it hath been a reward to his force. His wage for which he labored, I have given to him the land of Egypt, in that they wrought for me an affirmation of the Lord of Jehovah. In that day I caused to shoot up a horn to the house of Israel, and to thee I give an opening to the mouth in their midst, and they have known that I am Jehovah. So we can all understand that this is contemporary. This isn't like future stuff. So this guy right off the bat is wrong. He's misapplying this stuff here, but let's continue on.
Those chapters. And then we've got this chapter 32, which is so strong with judgment and wrath and going to the pits of Sheol and hell. It says it so many times in this chapter.
Okay, so let's look at chapter 32, and again, we will get we're going to get some context here. So, and it cometh to pass in the 12th year, in the 12th month, in the first of the month, hath the word of Jehovah been unto me, saying, Son of man, lift up a lamentation for Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And thou hast said unto him, A young lion of nations thou hast been like, and thou art as dragon in the seas. And thou comest forth with thy flowings, and dost trouble the waters with thy feet, and thou dost foul their flowings. Again, this is talking about like the flood language that he was just talking about in chapter 29. Thus said the Lord Jehovah, and I have spread out for thee my net with an assembly of many peoples, and they have brought thee up in my net. And I have left thee in the land, on the face of the field I do cast thee out, and have caused to dwell upon thee every fowl of the heavens, and have satisfied out of thee the beasts of the whole earth. So this is God making good on what he said in chapter 29. And I have put thy flesh on the mountains, and filled the valleys with thy hugeness, and watered the land with thy flowing from thy blood unto the mountains, and streams are filled from thee. And in quenching thee I have covered the heavens, and made black their stars. The sun with a cloud I do cover, and the moon causeth not its light to shine. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is judgment language. This is what Christ talks about in the Olivet Discourse. This is what Isaiah talks about in Isaiah 13. This is what Isaiah also talks about in Isaiah 34. This is what's talked about in Revelation. Do you not get it yet? Do you? Oh my gosh, I'm not even sharing the tab. Sorry. Do you not get it yet? That this is what's being said. Ezekiel 32:7 is judgment language upon Egypt brought forth by Babylon. But when that happened, there'd be no stars, the sun would be darkened, the moon would not cause its light to shine. The luminaries of light in the heavens would be made black over thee, and I have given darkness over thy land, in affirmation of the Lord Jehovah. And I have vexed the heart of many peoples in my bringing in thy destruction among nations unto lands that thou hast not known. And I have made many peoples astonished at thee, and their kings are afraid at thee with trembling. In my brandishing my sword before their faces, they have trembled every moment, each for his life in the day of thy fall. For thus said the Lord Jehovah, a sword of the king of Babylon entereth thee. So here's what I don't get. Okay, let's just stop right here at this verse. What I don't get is if Mystery Babylon is supposed to be the Antichrist or whatever, and yet Ezekiel 32, this Pharaoh is supposed to be the Antichrist. What is the Antichrist sword being entered into itself? Right? There's no consistency. The consistency is honestly at face value. Okay, a sword of the king of Babylon would enter him. By swords of the mighty I caused thy multitude to fall. The terrible of nations, all of them, they have spoiled the excellency of Egypt, and destroyed hath been all her multitude. And I have destroyed all her beasts from beside many waters, and trouble them not doth a foot of man any more. Yea, the hoofs of beasts trouble them not. Then do I cause their waters to sink, and their rivers as oil I cause to go, an affirmation of the Lord Jehovah. In my making the land of Egypt a desolation, and desolated hath been the land of its fullness, in my smiting all the inhabitants in it, and they have known that I am Jehovah. Do you get it yet? Like, is the message clear yet from God? When he's saying, this is how I make myself known, people. This is how I bring myself into the manifestation of of my own creation. That's what God is saying. If something is an affirmation, right? It's the affirmative. It means that it's true. So what God is saying here is that when I smite all the inhabitants in Egypt, that's how they would know that I am Jehovah. A lamentation it is, and they have lamented her. Daughters of the nations do lament her. For Egypt and for all her multitude, they lament her. When that would happen, that would be the affirmation of the Lord Jehovah. And it cometh to pass in the 12th year, in the 15th of the month, hath the word of Jehovah been unto me, saying, Son of man, wail for the multitude of Egypt, and cause it to go down, it and the daughters of honorable nations unto the earth, the lower parts, with whose going down to the pit. Then whom hast thou been more pleasant? So then whom hast thou been more pleasant? Go down and be laid with the uncircumcised. In the midst of the pierced of the sword they fall, to the sword she hath been given. They drew her out, and all her multitude. Speak to him, do the gods of the mighty out of the midst of Sheol. With his helpers they have gone down. They have lain with the uncircumcised, the pierced of the sword. It's like super strong language here. And again, the gods of the mighty, this is talking about office, okay? God is saying, hey, every other great king that I brought down, you can go ahead and talk to them. They'll know who I am because it's an affirmation of who I am. There is Ashur and all her assembly. Round about him are his graves. All of them are wounded, who are falling by the sword, whose graves are appointed in the sides of the pit, and her assembly is round about her grave. All of them wounded, falling by sword, because they gave terror in the land of the living. So again, this is the judgment. Ashur is Assyria. Did Assyria get judged by Babylon? Yes, absolutely. There is Elam and all her multitude. Round about is her grave, all of them wounded, who are falling by sword, who have gone down uncircumcised into the earth, the lower parts, because they gave their terror in the land of the living, and they bear their shame with those going down to the pit. In the midst of the wounded, they have appointed a bed for her with all her multitude. Round about him are her graves, all of them uncircumcised, pierced of the sword, for their terror was given in the land of the living, and they bear their shame with those going down to the pit. In the midst of the pierced he hath been put. There is Meshech, Tubal, and her multitude. Round about him are her graves, all of them uncircumcised, pierced by the sword, for they gave their terror in the land of the living. And they lie not with the mighty, who are falling of the uncircumcised, who have gone down to Sheol with their weapons of war, and they put their swords under their heads, and their iniquities are on their bones, for the terror of the mighty is in the land of the living. And thou, in the midst of the uncircumcised, art broken, and dost lie with the pierce of the sword. There is Edom, her kings, and all her princes, who have been given up in their might with the pierced of the sword, and they with the uncircumcised do lie, and with those going down to the pit. There are princes of the north, all of them, and every Zidonian, who have gone down with the pierced in their terror. Of their might they are ashamed, and they lie uncircumcised with the pierced of the sword, and they bear their shame with those going down to the pit. Then doth Pharaoh see, and he hath been comforted for all his multitude. The pierced of the sword, Pharaoh and all his force, an affirmation of the Lord Jehovah. For I have given his terror in the land of the living, and he hath been laid down in the midst of the uncircumcised with the pierced of the sword, Pharaoh and all his multitude, an affirmation of the Lord Jehovah. Does that sound like the Antichrist? Because if you go back in history and read up on all of this happening, right? Assyria, Elam, Mesesh, Tubal, Edom, the princes of the north, Zidonians. Okay, Sidon. It's an ancient Phoenician city. Sidon. Sidon was going to be made into a ruin, if I'm not mistaken. Talks about it in Kings and Chronicles and everything. Yeah, look at it. 2 Kings 23:13. And the high places that were east of Jerusalem, that were on the south of the Mount of Corruption, which had built Solomon, king of Israel, for Asheroth, the abomination of the Sidonians, for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, for Milcom, the abomination of the sons of Ammon, defiled the king. So the Sidonians had Ashtoreth. That's why you see here they were gone down with the pierced in their terror. I'm sorry, but did these people, were they saved? Did they go to heaven? Is that what's being talked about here? No. This is just judgmental language. So let's go back and see what this guy has to say still.
You can certainly see the blueprint. And then chapter 33 and on, the direction changes in Ezekiel. Now, Ezekiel's very, very prophetic, as many of you know. It was written, well, a lot of it was written 5 years after the second siege in, let me think about this, is it around 597, I believe, something like that was the second siege. So it would have been maybe 592, something like that, where he would have been writing a lot of his material. So Ezekiel 124, most of that was before the siege in 586 BC, which we've talked about before. So, but we have these themes here, and like I said, we're going to read the Bible, I think, on a live stream. But like, for example, in Ezekiel 28, verse, let's see here, verse 12, you were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. So that's like it's really, everything's pointing to Satan here in this passage. It's really an image of Satan. And what we have here too is in chapter 28, we've got what's called the king of the prince of Tyre. So it's a person that kind of looks like the Antichrist. And then in chapter 29, it's the king of let me think here. Let me just go and look at it. It's Pharaoh. It's Pharaoh. So we got the king of Tyre, and then we got the Pharaoh in 29. And it's just how this leader, this king, is going to fall, and he's going to elevate himself, and he's going to be like God and all that kind of stuff. So there's a ton of clear scripture in chapter 28 and 29 that really points to Antichrist kind of theme stuff. Then we got judgment in hell in chapter 32. Okay, so
I believe we just thoroughly went through and debunked that. Again, it's not about Antichrist. It definitely is typology to Israel. Okay, Israel is the antitype to all of this judgment language. Absolutely, they were going to fall just like these other nations did, in the sense that the Mosaic covenant was going to stop.
Take that all with a grain of salt, but could the chapter numbers be connected with the year? And I think so. I think that's very possible. I remember.
So this is what the people have to do. They have to start getting goofy and saying, well, the chapter number is like, having to do with the year that this is supposed to go down. And it's just like, no, this is not. You got to feel bad for them.
Remember you guys I talked about this. This is why another connection here. So this is the main point of the video, but we're going to go over here and just do some reviews now and just look at 6 papers that I had in the past. If you read Psalm 132, it's so strong in it looks like it's Jesus the Messiah sitting on his throne. If you read Psalm 84, meaning the Hebrew, the idea of how old Israel is, 1948 plus 84. So in their 84th year, 2032. it's like it looks like Messiah stuff too. Like it seems like Jesus is being crowned as Messiah in these chapters. But now we have another layer with the chapters in.
Yeah, and again, that's just not it's not accurate. I mean, there might be something to it where obviously, I'm not going to disagree that those chapters might be talking about Messiah. I'm not going to go through and read those whole chapters, but just the fact that he's trying to apply it to, well, this is all future stuff and it's going to happen in this year because of the chapter number. It's just sad. It's terrible hermeneutics. Okay.
Ezekiel as a potential thing. Okay. And then we got midpoints. If you read that seems like a midpoint. And like if we get raptured in 2025, the midpoint could be in this area. It fits really perfect with this Ezekiel timeline. So we're going to primarily talk about the prophecy in Ezekiel in a live stream sometime and study it out. It's just a good reminder that Jacob's age, 1948 plus 84 years, the age of Israel, gets you to 2032, the potential second coming. So that's just a quick chart there. We got another quick chart where we talked about 1 Thessalonians being the trumpet of God. We talked about trump, and we talked about Psalm 77, the voice of your thunder, the coal, as H6963. And we have the trumpet, the blast, the trumpet that was blown by our Father, or in other words, his voice on Mount Sinai, which is attached to the Feast of Weeks, tied to Revelation 4. His voice, like a trumpet, come up.
So this is what I was talking about, where he understands a bit of like, okay, there's a theme here, right? Exodus 19 is talking about the blast of a trumpet. Well, let's look at it. We can look at it real quick because I know where he's talking about. And it's when God was on Sinai, when he like literally made his presence known. First of all, you've got smoke from the presence of Jehovah. He came down on it in fire. The mountain trembles, which is like an earthquake. The sound of a trumpet. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at the typology here of the feast of Weeks. He was saying, that's not Exodus 19. But Psalm 77, if we look here, saying that the voice of your thunder. Let's see. Yeah, so verse 18, the voice of thy thunder is in the spheres. Lightnings have lighted the world. The earth hath trembled, yea, it shaketh. So you see, this is talking about and this would be at the time when there's poured out waters have thick clouds. So it's like there's thick clouds and there's rain. Skies give forth a noise. Thine arrows go up and down. The sea is thy way, and thy paths are in many waters. Thy tracks have not been known. So this is talking about the presence of God. I think it's important that it says, and thy tracks have not been known, because this is talking about obviously the presence of God not leaving behind physical footsteps. God's presence is not physical. Freddie says, happy birthday. Hey, Freddie. I hope everything's going good, man. It's good to see you. Good to see you. So thou hast led as a flock thy people by the hand of Moses and Aaron. So I agree. Psalm 77, again, all of the Old Testament is pointing to Christ, right? This is all typology. Christ is the fulfillment, right? The antitype, or Israel's destruction in AD 70. But when we're looking at this, it's talking about the same thing as when God made his presence known on Mount Sinai. What he's not getting is the recapitulation in Revelation. So look, when we look at Revelation, I think it first appears in Revelation 9. No. Revelation 6. Okay, 7. Yeah, right. Wherever it's at. Sorry, 8. Revelation 8. Well, you got the 7th seal. What happens? You've got a censer filled with fire of the altar, and it's cast to the land. So that's like how God came in fire in Exodus. There came voices and thunders and lightnings and an earthquake. Same thing happens in Revelation 11 at the final trumpet. Okay, there's lightnings and voices and thunders and an earthquake and great hail. It's like the fire that's coming down. No different from what's happening in Revelation, what is it, 16? There's voices and thunders and lightnings and a great earthquake came. Now it's adding a little bit more oomph each time, right? That's John portraying the same thing though multiple times. So he says it's Revelation 4:1 because he's saying this is the rapture. After these things I saw, and lo, a door opened in the heaven, and the first voice that I heard is as of a trumpet speaking with me, saying, "Come up hither, and I will show thee what behooveth to come to pass after these things." After what things, right? Well, he's talking about the letters being written to the messengers of the ecclesias. Okay, cool. After that message gets to them, this is what's going to happen after. And unfortunately for you guys, the timeline it don't add up because Christ says immediately after the tribulation of those days, this stuff would happen. Okay, so this is not talking about the rapture. This is not talking about John being the first person to be raptured and go into heaven, literally. Okay, he was in the spirit. Just like in Revelation 1. He was in the spirit. All right. So let's see where this guy has to go with this.
I'm up here and I'm going to show you some stuff. Voice like a trumpet. It's all connected and it all points to the Mount Sinai experience. Next, just a quick review here. They went, history tells us if you match it up with the Assyrian records, it seems like the Exodus when they crossed the Jordan to go to Jericho was in 1406. They went to war with the nations for 7 years. I think they got their land in 1399 BC. You do some math and all that kind of stuff, and it could potentially get you to this timeline of 2025, 2032. That's 3,430 years, 490 times 7.
And again, where is he getting 490 times 7? That's nowhere in the Bible. There's 490 years because there's 70 weeks of years. 70 times 7 is 490. You don't get to go ahead and multiply that by 7 again for convenience's sake. Because, yeah, you're obviously going to get some kind of bigger number that can push this out. But that's not what the Bible says.
We talked about that in the past. Go check out some of those older videos if you'd like to learn more about that. We've got Jacob's trouble, rapture timing. We've got Jacob's age, which we talked about earlier on, 1948 plus 77. That's the year that he probably met Rachel and Leah. This is the year that he would have had a vision of a ladder, which I think it was DNA, the blood of Christ, and this ties.
No, again, this is like kooky, crazy theory stuff. It's not the blood of Christ. It's a ziggurat. Okay, if we go to that in Genesis, I mean, it's very, there's a lot that goes into this, I guess, but let's see. Jacob is here, Genesis 28. Okay. So Jacob goeth out from Beersheba and goeth toward Haran, and he toucheth at a certain place and lodgeth there, for the sun hath gone in, and he taketh of the stones of that place and maketh him his pillows and lieth down in that place. So this dude's sleeping on a rock. Okay, that's how much faith Jacob had. That's how much was accredited to him as righteousness. Okay. And so he dreameth, and lo, a ladder set up on the land. So let's look at this here. Interestingly enough, it's the only time that this word is ever used in the Bible, suyam. However, it's more like a staircase. And it comes from the word salal, which is to lift up, to exalt, or to cast up, or to build a way. So this is not DNA. It's not a double helix. Okay. What's actually being said here, if we take this into context, Abraham was brought out of Ur of the Chaldees. Okay. If you look up Ur and Udur, these are places that have been discovered to have practiced ritual human sacrifice. They built ziggurats there, and they sacrificed humans on top of these ziggurats. Very similar to what they do in South, or what they did in South America. Okay, me and my wife, we've been to Chichen Itza, which is a very large standing ziggurat in right by Cancun, Mexico. Okay, you go there. There's a giant ziggurat. They would take people up there, and they do ritual human sacrifice. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were going through an area where that's what people did. They built ziggurats and they performed ritual human sacrifice on top of them. So in Genesis 28:12 and following, God is on a ziggurat. Okay, it's a large step. It's a bunch of steps. That's all a ziggurat is, ladies and gentlemen. It's steps leading up to something. So these steps were set up on the land, and its head is touching the heavens. Well, it's talking about the top of it. The top of it, the head, the chief, the top, the beginning, means the head, Rosh, like Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. So its head reached to heaven, meaning that like the top of it reached to the heavens, right? It's touching the heavens. And lo, messengers of God are going up and coming down by it. And lo, Jehovah is standing upon it. And he saith, I am Jehovah, God of Abraham thy father, and God of Isaac. The land on which thou art lying, to thee I give it, and to thy seed. So what is being said here is that God is proving that he is the God above all gods. Because when they would do these ritual human sacrifices on the ziggurats, they'd be sacrificing to false pagan gods. God is taking that same imagery that Jacob would have seen and would have known, and he's saying, oh, yeah, you think that you're going to go up the top of this ziggurat and you're going to do a ritual human sacrifice? Nope, I'm at the top of this ziggurat. I will bring myself as propitiation, which is what happened on the cross. But he's also notifying him that the land that he is in when he was going toward Haran was Israel. He was in the land of Israel. Okay. Thy seed has been as the dust of the land, and thou hast broken forth westward and eastward and northward and southward, and all the families of the ground have been blessed in thee and in thy seed. And lo, I am with thee, and have kept thee whithersoever thou goest, and have caused thee to turn back unto this ground. So God's like, I'm the one that brought you here. For I leave thee not till that I have surely done that which I have spoken to thee. And Jacob awaketh out of his sleep and saith, surely Jehovah is in this place, and I knew it not. And he feareth and said, how fearful is this place? This is nothing but a house of God, and this a gate of the heavens. Folks, he could have very well been on Mount Zion. He could have very well been sleeping on the place where the temple was going to be built, because God's presence was there in that temple when the ark rested in there. That would make it the gate of the heavens. And let's see if this word here. Yeah, it's the word gate. An opening, a door, a gate. Very much so like we see in Revelation. It's Philadelphia, I believe. Yep. And to the messenger of the assembly in Philadelphia, write, these things saith he who is holy, he who is true, he who is having the key of David, he who is opening and no one doth shut, and he shutteth and no one doth open. I have known thy works. Lo, I have set before thee a door, an opened door, and no one is able to shut it, because thou hast a little power, didst keep my word, and didst not deny my name. So because of what they did, just like that place where God was standing at the top of that ziggurat, himself being the propitiation, these people in Philadelphia had the access to the gate of the heavens, right? The door of the heavens. This is spiritual. So whatever he's talking about here about the Jacob's ladder and everything is just unbiblical and unfounded. And again, he goes on to, he's adding these timelines. They don't make sense. 1948 is not a prophetic time. Very easy to debunk that. God said he would bring Israel back in the land if they turned back to God and they did all of statutes and commandments. Let me ask you something, ladies and gentlemen. In 1948, did the Jews accept Christ as their Messiah? No. Current day, the place in Israel known as what's that place called? It's like the what is that place called? Oh, and also they never became a nation; they became a state. So if you think that they became a nation again, yeah, unfortunately, it's not the nation of Israel; it's the state of Israel. But Tel Aviv, yeah. So Tel Aviv is actually the homosexual capital of the world. Okay. Yeah, it's like originally was Jaffa, which is great, good for them. But if you look up like where it's at now, essentially modern day, it is known to be like the party destination for homosexuals. You'll probably find it somewhere around here. Where it talks about it. Let's see if they have the word. Yeah, there we go. It's named the best gay city in the world. So yeah, that's the people that God they're following God's commandments, right? That makes them a nation. God brought those people back into the nation that's rightfully theirs so that they could make it the best gay city in the world. No. So his entire premise is false on that regard as well. 1948 is not a prophetic time at all. And also, a generation is 40 years. That brings you to 1988. Sorry, the rapture didn't happen in 1988. So they just want to keep pushing out these timelines for who knows why. So that's all I've got for this time. I'm going to come back and revisit this. I'm going to continue to prep for my debate with this guy. And I'm going to give him the biblical smackdown. Missing Mod says this makes no sense. The Lord is the King of Kings. If he was on Earth, he wouldn't need to convince people he is. We would know. Yeah, I never said he was on Earth. So, if you're talking about his timeline, yeah, no, his timeline, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like if Jesus literally physically comes back, I highly doubt there's going to be people that be like, no, man, that's not Jesus. Like, what are you talking about? Supposedly the heavens is supposed to explode and like what? It just doesn't make no sense. So yeah, you're right, Missing One. Sorry, I thought you were talking about me. I'm like, that's not my purview. But yeah, this timeline makes no sense. If you think that Jesus physically is reigning and people are denying that he's physically reigning, that would make zero sense, right? Again, that's why the whole idea of futurism makes no sense at all. But I will definitely gladly debate this guy on the rapture. We'll prove the rapture wrong and hopefully edify the thousands of people that are listening to this guy. Yeah, exactly. Missing mod. Exactly. So, all right, guys, I wanted to do a little bit longer of a stream, but I'm gonna have to cut it short for today. Next week, we will kind of pick up where we left off, though. We'll go through a couple more of this guy's videos, and it's pretty easy to debunk and see where he gets it wrong, and we'll debate him. Missing mod says, thanks. I like your content. I appreciate that. Very much. If you want to get together and do a collaboration, hop on stream with one another or whatever, just let me know, Missing Mod. You can drop a comment or whatever, and we'll continue to go through this and build on this debate repertoire that I'm going to use here to get this guy to understand the rapture is not biblical and it's not what he thinks it is. So appreciate everybody. Until next time, take it easy.